everyone, it's Julia. Welcome to my podcast, or welcome back if you caught the first episode. I'm here to talk about knitting and the stuff that I've knit. And I'm really excited to be on this podcast. Again, I did give a brief introduction on my last episode, but I did want to just reframe and put the episode into context. So I'm Julia. I've been knitting since 2015, so almost 10 years, and I've been having a really good time. I make a lot of garments, and I can make a couple of shawls and accessories. I'm in a big garment era, so that's what's going on, mostly on the podcast. Additionally, I decided to start the podcast because I wanted to catalog the things that I'm knitting in chronological order as time progresses. So that is what podcasts do. So I was like, oh, podcast would be perfect for my goals. I hope you're here to learn about what some styling or some options for knitting and how I've modified my patterns to fit me, and to give you some ideas about how you could modify patterns for yourself too. I'm hoping maybe to one day design my own sweater based on my preferences, so we'll see if that ever happens. But in the true podcast nature, we're gonna go ahead and start with what I'm wearing, which is also a finished object. So this is my port sweater. The yarn is Explorer Knits and Fibers Boucle in the color Chinley. So if you follow Explorer Knits and Fibers, you've probably seen this sample. And I really fell in love with this sample as soon as I saw it. I knew when the new base came out for the National Parks collection last spring that I wanted to get some, but I wasn't sure what color. So I originally thought maybe To the Stars Who Listen, because that's one of my favorite colors. I have a skein right here. If you can see the dog, that's Maxie. But when I saw this sweater, I was like, that's a nice neutral-ish color that goes well with my style. So I fell in love with this color right away, and I fell in love with the sample, so I made it. A couple specs. I do keep a journal. A couple specs for my port sweater. This is my project page for my port sweater. I made this using my Leica size 5 needles for the stockinette part, and the pattern suggests a size 9, but with the boucle yarn it can be a little hard to get gauge, so just experiment. The way I like to do my gauge swatches, especially on this kind of a garment, is I knit the back piece, and then I blocked it and I did my gauge on the back piece, and I did have to redo it twice. But that was something that I like to do for my gauge swatches. I just start knitting, and then I'll block that object and do the gauge swatch on that object. And a lot of the times it works out. Sometimes I have to rip frog the whole thing, but I do it before I get too far. So like the back neck or the start of the yoke. And that's just something I like to do because it's literally the garment. So that, I think I get a really accurate gauge measurement because I'm knitting the garment. So that's one reason I do my gauge swatches like that. Well, I guess it's not a gauge swatch, but that's how I measure my gauge over the course of a project. So I did get the recommended gauge for the sweater. Additional things, I did have to make my own adjustments to the sleeves. So I knit the size 3. I'm a between size kind of person. I'm between the size 2, 3. So I can often modify patterns so that they fit me how I want them to fit. But for this sweater, I wanted it to have that oversized look, and I was comfortable with it being oversized. So the chest circumference I ended up getting on this sweater was 46 inches, and my chest circumference is closer to 37, 36. So that's about 10 inches of positive ease for me, and I don't often do that, so I wanted that for this sweater. So I knit the size 3. And then I did something different for the sleeves. So for the sleeves, I can have an issue with my sleeves being too big. I don't know if it's my knitting, my small circumference gauge is bigger, or I have skinny arms. My boyfriend says that's not it, but he's like, you have regular arms. So I did something different for the sleeves to accommodate how my sleeves normally come out a little too wide. I picked up for the smallest size. So even though I'm in a size 3, I only picked up the smallest size recommended stitches for the sleeve. And then I did not decrease at the recommended rate. I decreased every 4 rounds. So that's what gave me this nice smooth transition into my sleeve cuff. I actually also went down a needle size for my sleeves too. Again, that's probably my small circumference gauge is a little bigger than my bigger gauge. So that's one reason I might have needed to do that. And then, so I knit the sleeves on a size 4. I knit the cuffs on a size 4 as well, which is really nice. It gives it this relaxed feel. So a lot of times cuffs can like cinch in, but these don't. It's really relaxed. And then so those are my mods for the sleeves. I made a couple mods on the collar as well. I picked up the 98 stitches as they were recommended to pick up here, but that was way too big. So I ended up I've ripped out the whole collar and I redid it with 78 stitches instead of 98 stitches. That gave a really good fit for my collar, and I really appreciated that as well. Sorry, I'm looking around for one of my dogs. I don't see her. I'll have to go find her in a second. Okay, additional notes. I started knitting this at Thanksgiving, and I finished it. I bound it off and everything was done January 31st so that it could be my January finished object. But then I had to rip out the collar and redo it and block. So it really didn't get done until February 3rd, but I'm counting it as a January finished object. So that's where this one's at. I've worn it so much since I've gotten it completed, and I ordered another sweater quantity of yarn to make a second one. So I did end up ordering the To the Stars Who Listen boucle from Explore Knits and Fibers. I got it from Spin Cycle Supply Co. They had a couple in stock. They had some skeins in stock, so that should be showing up at my door really soon. So on the next podcast, expect to see an acquisition. Additionally, I'm just reading through any other notes I might want to share. No. That's it. I really like the detail on these shoulders. Right here it has a little element of ribbing, which just ties all the designs together. And I really enjoyed making this. I do want to say that the boucle can hurt my hands. So I can't knit for prolonged hours with boucle yarn. I find it hard to pull through the needles because it kind of snags on itself. Not snags, but like catches. And it just is a little more effort to pull the yarn through each loop than like a smoother yarn. So that's my experience with boucle, and maybe an element to why it took me a minute to finish the sweater. I was also a busy time during the holidays, so I didn't get to knit on it that much in December. I knit mostly on it in January. And then I did have those issues with the sleeves. I made the sleeves twice, once to pattern and once with those mods that I said, because they came out huge. I really enjoyed making it. I love wearing it. My sister says it's the best thing I've ever made, and she's probably right. So that's my port sweater. Next, I have a second finished object. So my second finished object I showed on the podcast last week is the Daily Ritual Raglan. So last week I had to finish the body and the 2 sleeves. So I ended up finishing the body on Saturday, and then on Sunday I picked up one of the sleeves, and then I knit the sleeve throughout the week, and then yesterday, today is Sunday, the next Sunday. So today is Sunday, Super Bowl Sunday, February 11th. But on February 10th, I knit this whole sleeve, and then I knit them until I had to start the cuffs. I have been following Knit California, and she suggested knitting both sleeves right before the cuff, just so that one sleeve doesn't weigh down the whole sweater. So you can have this like issue with trying on a sweater that it weighs down the one sleeve that's done, and to get a more even fit, You could have a balanced weight on each side so that you know the actual length of the sweater. I knit my sleeves to, like, I have my specs written down. I knit them shorter than was in the design. I think that's because my arms are shorter. That's just my personal thought. My sleeves I knit 14.5 inches long, and I got a chest circumference of 42 inches, a waist circumference of 32 inches, which is something I love about this pattern. My measurements are pretty drastic between my bust and my waist. So my bust measurement is 36 and my waist measurement is 27. So I do like how it literally comes in 10 whole inches like my body does, which I really like about this sweater. It is this beautiful color. I think I mentioned it earlier, but I don't mind saying it again. It's the Flock colorway by Woolberry Fiber Co. and the color Flock. And then the bases are the Berry Merino and Berry Surrey held together. So you can see this beautiful halo from the Surrey. I hope it's catching the light well. And these amazing speckles. My favorite part about the speckles is the blues and greens that just occasionally show up. So you can see, I'm gonna hold up the fabric. You can see some beautiful speckles in this colorway. And I think that's something that Woolberry does really well. They do speckles and better than I think a lot of dyers do. That's my personal preference. I think, in my personal opinion, I think their speckles are gorgeous. All right, I didn't do very many mods on my sweater. Oh, that's a lie. I made a lot of mods on the sweater. The reason I say I did a lot of mods on the sweater is because I made it in between sizes. I made between a size 2 and size 3. So like I said about my port sweater, I'm between sizes. And so sometimes I'll size up, sometimes I'll size down, and sometimes I'll just modify the pattern to be in between the sizes. So how I did that for this sweater was I cast it on for the size 2. I'm not going to say the stitch counts. And then I followed the yoke for size 2, but I increased until I was between the 2 and the 3. So that is how I did that. I did the same thing with my gauge where I knit it and then I blocked it to get my gauge. So I didn't knit a swatch, but I did knit the garment. And I got exactly the 19 stitches for 4 inches gauge. I didn't check my row gauge. That's just not my style. If you check your row gauge and you're like pretty anal, or anal is probably the wrong word, but if you're pretty picky about getting the gauge according to the design, I'm not. So I'm not. And so I knit between the size 2 and the size 3. I cast it on for size 2. I increased between the 2-3. So I did end up doing the combination raglan. So you can see, let me see if you can actually see it. Maybe a tiny bit you can notice. I'm just looking to see how I can show you. So this is the raglan increase. Sorry, the raglan increases are right here. And you'll notice right before you split for sleeves, the raglan gets a little less defined. That's because you stop increasing on the sleeves and only increase on the body. And so I did that a couple times so that it would get in between the size 2 and the size 3. It's a beautiful written pattern. I love Parks patterns. I knit this sweater and the no sweatshirt, which I have plans for a second one. I knit one last summer and I think I'm gonna knit one soon. So there's that. Other mods I made, I knit the sleeves shorter than the pattern recommended. It said to do repeat a certain number of times, and I did the repeats 4 less times than that. So I had a bit shorter of a sweater. And I did the sleeve cuffs a little longer than suggested as well. Here's my sleeve cuffs. I love this gradual decrease in the sleeve. That's literally my style. Some people like a little more balloony sleeve. I like a gradual sleeve like this. I'm super excited to have this ready. My goal was Valentine's Day and I totally hit it, so that was awesome. And now I get to start a new sweater. And I have to block this still, so that's what's on the agenda for the rest of today. You can probably notice a little bit of texture change in the middle of the yoke, so I'll show that. And that's because I did mention I blocked it to check the gauge while I was knitting it. So I'm excited to block the whole thing. It blocks beautifully. I noticed that when I did it the first time. So I'm excited to get it all blocked and ready to wear for Valentine's Day. I don't think it's gonna be cold enough to actually wear it for Valentine's Day, but because I live in San Antonio, Texas, and we get like cold fronts. We don't get winter, we get cold fronts. And so we just haven't had a cold front in a while. The dogs are playing. I wonder if you can hear them. So that will be my second finished object of the year. And this is my first finished object that I started in 2024 and finished in 2024. Because I started this one in Thanksgiving, and this one was a New Year's cast on. This was a New Year's Eve cast. A New Year's Day cast on. This was a New Year's Day cast on. All right, that is my daily ritual raglan. The next thing I have is my whips. They're so cute playing. All right, if the camera shifted a little bit, it's because the dogs were playing and knocked it over. That actually happened twice. So I actually put them down for a nap, so it should be less of a distraction. Now I'm going to talk about my works in progress. So my current whips are not too many and not too exciting. I'm knitting a shawl with this beautiful linen Cashmere Caverns sock from Explore Knits and Fibers. I talked about it last time, but this is really special yarn to me. It's one of my very first Explore Knits and Fibers orders from 2020. So I got this during the lockdown of 2020. I ordered it from Colorful Yarns, a stockist from Explore Knits and Fibers. And I literally have just been holding on to this yarn. I bought like 6 skeins because I wanted to just have it in my stash. I knit a sweater from 3 of them, and so I gifted 1 skein to my sister. And so now I have these 2 left over for my shawl. So I was just getting the dogs. She was so sad. And so I'm knitting a shawl. I'm gradually decreasing. I'm gradually increasing until it hits a maximum point, and then I'll start decreasing, and it'll be an elongated diamond as it progresses along this trajectory. I love this shawl. The goal of the shawl is to have a warm item I can wear on top of a fancy dress or a fancy outfit, so that it doesn't throw off the vibes of the outfit, but adds an element of warmth. So I'm really excited to have that in my wardrobe eventually. I have no goals to finish it. It's just something I've been knitting on. It's garter stitch, so it's a definitely like meditative, mindless, just when I need something to knit, I have this kind of thing. I was knitting on it when I was editing the podcast last time, and when I was at a tricky part in my my sweaters. So it's just something that I have on the needles. I am going to try to keep my progress better this week. I moved my progress keeper already, so I don't really get to show where it was last week. It was about right here, so I knit approximately like 4 inches on it, which is good. Again, it's not like my main project, so that's what I have on the needles for this. And I remembered when I got this out that there's actually another project in this Black Pearl Magic bag. So, alright, sorry about that again, dogs. This is my Manhattan hat. It was also my Black Pearl Magic bag, but just kind of like hiding there on the bottom. It's made from Amanda Hope Yarns. I have the label right here. Amanda Hope Yarns Aussie Extra Fine Sport. So this is merino yarn from Australia. The little dog, I wonder if you can see him. From Australia. It's in the colorway White Lynx, which is this pretty gray speckled yarn. I'll show you the fabric. And this is again the Manhattan Hat by Tori Yu, and it's gonna have a double brim. That's how I want to do it because I want to use all the yarn I have. So to have that double brim, double folded brim, it's going to need 12 inches of 1x1 ribbing. So I'm just gonna be knitting on this the rest of my life. That's not true. I've actually knit this once before and I gave it as a gift to one of my coworkers. If I'm knitting on this, like it's like I really need it and like I really want it, I can have it finished in like a week, maybe less. So that's this Manhattan Hat. It's gonna have really pretty shaping on the top. I'll put up a picture somewhere on the screen so you can see the shaping on the Manhattan Hat, the little top part. It's such a cute hat. And the sport weight is just fine and warm enough to keep me toasty, and that's gonna be that double brim. So it's gonna be just that style that's like a classic beanie. So I'm excited to keep knitting on this. Again, I have no real goals to get it finished. So that might be in whip purgatory for who knows how long. All right, next is my future plans or the things I wanted to bring up that maybe I didn't quite get to from last podcast. So on last podcast, I had a couple goals. One of them was to start my Shifty. So this is the project page in my journal for my Shifty. And I actually haven't casted it on yet. The issue I'm currently having with my Shifty is I don't know where my small needles are. I have misplaced my 4, 5s, and 6 needles, and I do have 2s and 3s, which I can probably use for that, so I can stop making excuses and figure it out. But that's just where I am. I don't know where my needles are. I'm probably gonna end up replacing those 3 tips because I use them so frequently, so that when I find them again, it's probably good to have 2 of each of those sizes. Because I live in South Texas, so using a US 3, 4, and 5 is really common for me with fingering weight or DK weight or sport weight yarn. So that's a really common needle size for me. That's probably why I misplaced them. Next, I wanted to talk a little bit more about that Shifty. I also don't know, I'm getting a little scared. The gauge is 30.5 stitches for 4 inches, which is just small. So I'm worried that this is going to be such a slog to knit. It's going to take forever. And it's part of my Make 9 for the year. Let me show you my Make 9. It's part of my Make 9 for the year. So I do want to get it done this year. I do want to get it done this year. So I think if I start it now, I'm more likely to continue and to get it done. I know that my sister knit a Shifty. I'm looking for my Make 9. My sister knit a Shifty, and she made hers short sleeved, and she said because she didn't want to keep knitting it. So that's where I'm at with the Shifty. I'm probably gonna do the same thing as short sleeves. Here's my Make 9 page. So I love that my daily ritual was part of my Make 9. I'm gonna freeze it here a little longer so you can really see those Make 9s. I have the Salty Air Tee, the Anna Tee, the Spring Sorrel, the Daily Ritual Raglan, the Shifty, and the No Sweatshirt, and then 3 cardigans. The cardigans are the Kel cardigan, the Bookish cardi, and the Daft Days. I had to look at the cardigans again because I forgot. And so that brings me to the next plan I wanted to talk about, which was my Spring Sorrel. So I bought the Spring Sorrel pattern and I casted it on with my Sagrada Familia from Explore Knits and Fibers yarn. And this is that's Sagrada Familia. Don't you just love the little halo from a cashmere blend? So it's 80% wool, 10% cashmere, 10% nylon on so in the colorway Sagrada Familia. I'll show you it in the skein. So in the skein, it's this beautiful pastel rainbow. So there's the Explore Knits and Fibers label. and the back of the label where you can see the colorway name and the specs for the yarn. I wanted that spring swirl to really showcase the vibrancy of the yarn. I thought the dip stitch pattern with the reverse stockinette would really show the colors of the yarn. And when I started it, I just realized that it wasn't quite gonna work how I wanted it to. So I'm rethinking the pattern. What I noticed was for that pattern to really stand out, it does need a heavier yarn. And because I have the sock base of the cashmere yarn, and the pattern I really think needs a little heftier yarn. That's why it was designed in DK. I thought I could get away with my sock weight yarn. I could hit the gauge. I know I could hit the gauge. I just don't think it's gonna have the impact as it would have on the DK. So I'm thinking I'm gonna knit maybe a simpler t-shirt, something like the Outline Tank by Jessie May. I think that would be really pretty to show off the variegated color, a simple stockinette t-shirt. So that's what I'm gonna cast on, I think, as my next project. Just something, because it has a bunch of stockinette, and that'll be really cool break from my shifty that I need to cast on too. So I'm hoping by the time we come to the next podcast, I'll have 2 new cast-ons and 2 new whips to talk us through. Next are just the goals for the rest of the podcast. I'm gonna start I am on a little bit of a yarn. I have a different goal for my yarn stash than I did last year. So you can probably see my yarn. I keep it in this glass cabinet I got at IKEA. You can see my yarn. I have about 195 skeins, and I'm on and that's mainly because last year I called a growth year for my stash. So I got most of this yarn I did purchase last year. And I'm a teacher, and I share my expenses with my partner because we live together, and I don't have any kids. I do have the 2 dogs, maybe 3 dogs, and 2 cats, and part of my disposable income is my knitting. So last year I was in a really big growth year for my yarn stash. But now it's at the point where I'm just so excited for each project I have planned for each of these yarns that I'm less motivated to buy yarn. So you're not going to see a lot of acquisitions on this page, except when Explorer Knits and Fibers has a pre-order. So I did pre-order from the Monochrome collection. I got 3 skeins of Freezy Pop on the colorway in the base Surrey Alpaca. Freezy Pop is this beautiful, vibrant blue, and so I'm really excited to have like that bright blue color. That's why I had to get it, because I wanted it ever since the Ice Cream Social collection came out, and I ended up only getting a little bit of the Freezy Pop. So in the Ice Cream Social collection, I literally just got 1 sock set and 1 extra skein, and then I did get 1 other skein, but I've already knit that up. So this is the colorway Extra Sprinkles by Explorer Knits and Fibers, and then the sock set comes with the Freezy Pop. So I ordered 3 skeins of Surrey Alpaca on this Freezy Pop colorway, and I also ordered a 50 gram Denali sock. So I wanted to use the Freezy Pop as accents on the cuffs, collar, ribbing of whatever t-shirt I make with this Extra Sprinkles yarn. But I realized that this 20 gram mini is definitely not enough to do that. So that's why I got a 50 gram skein, so that I can do the accents I really wanted for that t-shirt. And then I did get the 3 skeins of the Surrey Alpaca because I want to knit like an Aran weight sweater. I know, for South Texas. Anyway, I want to knit like a worsted Aran weight sweater holding the alpaca with a commercial yarn. I think Barocco has a really pretty DK yarn that matches the color really well. So that's my plan for that when that comes. I probably won't get it knit until until November, December of this year, or maybe January of next year. And then I also ordered from the Monochrome collection the My Neon Era. And My Neon Era is a hot pink yarn. So this yarn is Heritage Sock. Their colorway highlighter pink, something like that. And that's just a commercial yarn from Cascade Heritage Sock. That sounds right. And I want to hold the My Neon Era Surrey double with this commercial yarn for just a bright, hot pink stockinette drop shoulder sweater. RO Knits and Pearls has a hot pink clove sweater, and so that's what I think I would probably want to knit with it. A clove sweater with this hot pink yarn. So that's something I'm really excited for. And those are my future plans for the Monochrome collection. And then my future plans for the year, definitely those make 9. But I'm also going to throw in just a couple projects in between the make 9. So probably I have a sweater quantity for Cozy Classic Raglan. I have a Linto I have planned. So I'm just going to throw in maybe like some quick knits. I think Cozy Classic Raglan is a quick knit. Linto can be a quick knit just because they have a larger gauge and use DK weight yarn. So I'm really excited to see how those go. I also like those as projects because they just come out so simple and staples, and they show off the yarn that I have picked for them. So those sweaters are going to be made from this is my Grand Canyon National Park on Rockies DK. I got this. I didn't get it from the National Park pre-order. I got it from a D-Stash. So this I want to make a Cozy Classic Raglan eventually. I literally showed I showed this to my boyfriend and I said, "What does this yarn make you think of?" And he said, "The Grand Canyon." And he knew nothing about the yarn. So people sometimes ask me why I support Allie so much, and that's the main reason why. Her yarn just is what it is. Like, this is National Park Grand Canyon yarn. So that's why I really support Allie, and I will always buy her yarn. I'm not an affiliate or anything, I just really like her yarn. And then the other plans I had for the Linto is this less traveled yarn. I got this from the Tinsmith's Wife in Comfort, Texas. So there's this one. And then it has this beautiful label with the gold. So that's Merlot. And it's a hand-dyed flat, I showed you the care instructions. I meant to show you this part where it says that it's merino, the color Merlot, 75% merino, 25% nylon, 245 yards from Argentina. And it's this pretty wine color. And I'm gonna make this into a Linto. So I don't know why I wanted to share those plans, but they were just speaking to me. And I hope you keep coming back to the podcast, and that you learn a little bit something from me or hear about my projects and get inspired. Have a great afternoon or morning or day that you're listening or watching this. And I really appreciate your time learning about what I've knit.